Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our Universal City Council meeting for Tuesday, June 17th at 6:30 p.m. Call to order and call for Quorum Check.
Mayor Pro Tem Fitzpatrick. Here. Councilmember Goolsby.
Here.
Councilmember Putt.
Here.
Councilmember Rubal.
Here.
Councilmember Shelby.
Here.
Councilmember Vaughan.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Invocation tonight is going to be presented by Councilmember Vaughan, and then I'll lead with the pledge.
Mayor, we're blessed to have our senior retiring pastor from First Baptist Universal City here, and he graciously accepted my last-minute request to share some word of God with us. So take it away.
Let's pray together. Father, we thank you for a wonderful city in which to live and to work. Lord, I thank you for these men and women that give so sacrificially their time, their energy, and their talents to lead us forward as a community. Lord, I pray for their wisdom and their insight. Father, we know that none of us know what's coming into the future, but you do. And so, Father, by your divine will and the leadership of your Spirit, you can help us make decisions now that we'll see in time were the right decisions. And so, Lord, we humbly ask that you would give wisdom. We pray for unity. Lord, we pray for cooperation. Lord, we pray that all things would go forward in our city, and that, Lord, this would be a great place to continue to live and to work and to play. So, Lord, we ask your blessings upon all these. We ask it in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Seated. Thank you very much, Reverend, for doing that. And now we're going into citizens to be heard. At this time, the public is invited to address the presiding official and speak on any matter that's specifically listed for public hearing elsewhere in this agenda. Please note that no city council deliberation or action will be taken at this time, and please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Speakers are encouraged to maintain decorum. Also, as an add-on, we've got quite a few requests last minute of people coming in asking to put slides and things up. So we'd like to remind the public that they want to use our screens to present something during the citizens to be heard. They may do so by emailing the city manager or city clerk. That way our email is filtered and it'll allow us to maintain security of our network system. Please send it in by 3 p.m., no later than 3 p.m. of the day of the meeting. And I'll give you, if you're interested in the city manager address or email, I've got them both right here, and we'll give them to you after the meeting, or you can get them on the website. Our first up with citizens to be heard, actually, Pastor, you should have just stayed up there. State your name, though, and your address. I appreciate it.
My name is David Lindo. I am First Baptist Church Universal City pastor. I live in Civil Oak, but I've worked for the past 34 years right here, 1401 Tapuka Road, First Baptist Church. So I prepared my remarks so that I'll keep them succinct, and you know how preachers can be to get wordy, so I'll stick to my notes here. City leaders, I'm honored to have a few moments to speak to you. For the past 34 years, I've had the joy of serving First Baptist Church of Universal City. It's been a great privilege to be a part of this city and see the growth of our community. I commend you for the consistent efforts to make UC a wonderful place to live and to work. I've reviewed the plans for the future of UC and rejoice to see the forward thinking of this leadership team. Watching businesses open, streets repaired, parks enhanced, and the building of housing and multi-housing units excites me to no end and is really good for my business. The one area of concern that I would like to address has to do with our fire and police departments. First Baptist benefits greatly by these services, Seldom does a month go by that we do not have a need for first responders, and our police department has always been prompt and professional in responding to our needs. I hope these essential services are given high priority in the upcoming budget process. It's my understanding that these services could be somewhat understaffed and underpaid in comparison with other local communities. A sense of safety is imperative to the momentum of a community. A well-staffed and compensated fire and police department is imperative. Over the past 5 years, I've watched what appears to me to be an exponential increase in homeless individuals, vandalism, drugs, and graffiti in our city. Though I do not track the crime in UC, it's my perception that there is some increase. I do not want the reputation of UC to decline as some of the cities east of us have declined. With the advent of all the housing going in and the population increase that is coming, I urge you to give careful consideration to increasing the restraining influence of our police, fire, and first responders by increasing their budgets, numbers, and compensation. We need to stay in front of this issue and not work from behind. The reputation of the community is essential to its future progress. Once a reputation is lost, it is seldom regained. Safety is a primary factor in a community's reputation. Thank you for the opportunity to be heard.
Thank you, Reverend. Appreciate that. Next up on the list is Mr. Hibberling.
John Heberling, 8434 Ulysses. I did submit a screen. Thank you so much. And you all have a copy of this in front of you. Every time I come here, I see the banner that's out here, the lone banner. And I think it's beautiful. And I wish they were all over the city. Unfortunately, our illustrious and esteemed city manager managed to steal about 99% of my thunder because my topic was going to be putting them on Pat Booker Road, and she informed me that TxDOT won't allow us to do that. However, we do have other roads, including UC Boulevard, Kitty Hawk, Aviation, especially through the Aviation District. And I would like to ask the council to consider a program of placing these kinds of banners throughout the city. They're not that expensive. I've been pricing them. And of course, we have multiple. It adds up, but you get discounts for multiples. What I have on the overhead here, number one, here's Austin, the top left corner. Their banner is advertising Austin city limits. It's not the city advertising that. The folks behind Austin city limits have paid for that banner. Same thing in Boston. When we were in Boston a few years ago, I took pictures of them there. And you got two different people advertising in that one, the Boston Pops and Liberty Mutual, who at the time was sponsoring a 4th of July fireworks demonstration. The two below are actually from Australia. The one on the left is just celebrating Christmas, the city paying for really nice Christmas decorations. And then the one on the right, it happened to be Australia's Independence Day, so they had banners just everywhere that happened to be in Sydney. If you want to see what they look like, the Cavendish or Cavender, whatever it is, Cadillac place at 35 and 1604, they have them all along their storefront. These things are bright, cheerful. I believe they add to civic spirit. They certainly, I enjoy looking at them whenever I see them, as you can tell, because who else goes on vacation and takes pictures of flags? But I really think they liven up the city. While it might on the surface look like, oh no, that's just another thing to spend money on, I specifically included the top two to demonstrate that they can be used as a revenue source as well if you get people advertising. And of course, as a city, we could control whatever standards we would establish for what a banner had to look like. So I would just ask the council, and again, our city manager said the EDC is actually already talking about this, and she said you should really probably talk to them. But I don't know them, and I like you guys, so I'm talking to you. And if there is anything that we can do, if the city deems it wise, I would just ask you to consider it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And third up is Mr. Mitz, Ken Mitz.
Kidmets that reside at 13410 Adonis. Said over the past couple of months, citizens have been interrupted, muted, and or mocked during the citizens to be heard portion of the agenda. I understand Mrs. Buck was interrupted, and I witnessed Mrs. Eichelhardt's comments being muted and mocked. These actions not only suppress free speech, but also discourage others from speaking up. I recommend the minutes associated with Ms. Eichelhardt's comments that were muted by the mayor be updated to include her comments. In addition, the council should require the complete audio of her statement to be included in the city's audio recording of that council meeting. Ms. Eichelhardt can provide a copy of that audio if the city does not have one. I urge the mayor to help restore professionalism to the city council meetings and stop mocking, interrupting, and or muting citizens. Universal City does not need to tarnish its reputation by stifling or mocking free speech. Just because the council, in these cases the mayor, did not like what was being said, does not give him the right to interrupt, mock, and or mute citizens. I respectfully request an apology be made to Mrs. Buck and Mrs. Eichelhardt. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Betts. I appreciate that. That is closed out, and now we go to staff reports and other discussion items. City manager report.
Thank you, Mayor. As you remember, we had requested that the National Golf Foundation do an economic impact analysis on the Olympia Hills Golf Course. That was following the original report that they had done. So they have done that report. I believe you've all had a copy of it. Some of you had questions for them, which they have been forwarded. And so we have on with us this evening Mr. Richard Singer from the National Golf Foundation, and he is the lead on this project. So I see that everyone is online. Thank you so much, Richard, for being here. And Maribel's going to do the slideshow for them. So if you hear him say next slide a few times, it's because we're controlling the system.
Good evening. Good evening, Universal City. Good to be back in front of you again.
And maybe, Maribel, we can adjust the volume.
Can everyone hear me? Am I coming through? Or?
You're coming through.
Yeah.
You're coming through now.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you. It's good to be back with you in Universal City again. As I told you last time I was in front of you, you all have become such a big part of my life these last few months. I had no idea, I didn't imagine it was going to continue well into 2025, so it's been great. You have a great property there at Olympia Hills, and it's been great to study it. What we're here tonight is to review something that I had mentioned to you when I presented to you back in March. On the findings of the review of operations of Olympia Hills, and thought that it would be something that you should consider as a city is to take a closer look at Olympia Hills and the impact that it has on your city, Universal City, particularly the economic impact. And I suggested that an economic impact of the facility be completed, and you have elected to do that, and had confidence in the National Golf Foundation and our independence to come back and do it. And we have prepared that report and delivered it to you, and I'm here tonight to kind of give you a summary of it, present the findings, and answer your questions. And with me on my team tonight, we have our academic partner, Dr. Terry Flower, from the George Mason University in Northern Virginia, chair and professor of public policy. He's assisted NGF on a number of economic impact studies that we've done over the years, and also Bill Goldman of the NGF, who is sitting in for Eddie okay. I guess we'll just have you move the slides along and just tell you okay, it's okay to advance. So we'll do that to keep everything moving. Just a reminder, again, who we are, the National Golf Foundation, leader in golf economics and golf research. Of course, as I mentioned, we've done our previous review of Olympia Hills, started in late 2024 and into early part of 2025, so very fresh. We're an independent organization practice. Okay? We're here tonight to discuss the understanding of Olympia Hills Golf Event Center and its overall contribution to Universal City. And our report provides an estimate of the economic contribution, as well as some other impacts that the facility has, including non-economic impacts that we have addressed in many other golf facility reviews like this over the years. And okay, we thought that the study would be helpful for you to understand some of these impacts. We looked very closely at the facility and the impacts for 2023 and 2024. And the reason we did that is in 2024, Olympia Hills underwent a green renovation, and some of the revenue numbers were depressed as a result of that. So we wanted to look more closely at some of the numbers that had been generated in 2023, which we thought represented a good sample for the type of activity and revenue that Olympia Hills generates. And this property is generating $2.9 million in revenue and 35 jobs at the facility itself. Every year, Olympia Hills spends some money on capital improvements. The green renovation project that it did in 2024 was more than $500,000 in direct spending that supported additional jobs in the city. And then we also gave you an estimate of non-resident spending, and I'll talk about that a little more in a minute. But patrons to the facility who are non-residents of Universal City are contributing a significant amount of money to your city, meaning that when they come and they play golf or host an event or attend an event at Olympia Hills, they do additional spending in Universal City while they're there, and that supports additional economic impact and jobs within the city. And then obviously a significant impact is residential housing. The presence of Olympia Hills in Universal City impacts the value of homes that are in either adjacent or nearby communities. And we did a pretty deep dive into that, understanding that there would be direct frontage units, houses that are directly on the golf course that have a view amenity and a value related to that. Others that are in immediate proximity to Olympia Hills that have their value added because of that, and others that are part of branded neighborhoods within Universal City that are branded under the Olympia Hills brand. And even though they may not be immediately proximate, still benefit from being that close to it. Okay? So in doing our analysis, we estimated both a direct economic impact as well as a broader total economic impact that includes the full output of everything, including the indirect and induced effects of economic activity at Olympia Hills. The direct golf economy of Olympia Hills is nearly $5.33 million a year, or at least it was in 2023 and would have been in 2024, and we would expect it to be something very similar to that in 2025 and years going on. The people who come to Olympia Hills to either play golf or participate in a clubhouse event are spending additional money in the community, as well as supporting jobs at Olympia Hills, supporting jobs in the community, and all of that combines to contribute close to $8 million in overall economic impact, economic output for the city. Supporting about 51 jobs that pay $1.76 million in salaries, wages, and benefits. We also noted that it contributes over $480,000 in tax revenues to the city, and that doesn't include what we would call nearly $500,000 in additional net gain on property taxes. That is, that the fact that Olympia Hills is present and the value of real estate is enhanced by that, the city is able to tap into that through property tax collections that we felt were as much as $500,000 more. Okay? This is kind of the table that summarizes all of it. I would note that the incremental tax revenues at the bottom there, $480,900, includes approximately $80,000 in sales taxes collected by Olympia Hills itself for the golf and clubhouse activities that are ongoing at Olympia Hills. But a lot of this was calculated using an in-plan model which is a nationally known and widely accepted method for estimating the impact. In the question and answer session, if you have some questions about that, we have Dr. Terry Flower, our academic partner, who is a leader in using a plan, and particularly for parks and recreation type uses. And one of the reasons that we brought him in on this project and can help explain some of that if there are questions about it. But ultimately, this is kind of the numbers impact of Olympia Hills on Universal City. A direct impact of about $5.3 million, and a total economic output close to $8 million. It's supporting 51 jobs, wages and benefits, and incremental tax revenues to the city of Universal City. Okay? We also wanted to look at the impact from enabled industries. And there are two key areas that we looked at there. One, as I mentioned earlier, the non-resident spending, and the other is the real estate impacts. We took a little deeper dive into that. Non-resident spending is important here because our estimates, supported by the golf course itself, had shown us that about 89% of all activity at Olympia Hills is from patrons who are not residents of Universal City. These non-resident users come into the city to participate at Olympia Hills and are spending as much as $720,000 a year in your city when they come there. We broke it out in our report into different types. There are some that come from out of state. There are some that come from other non-local Texas locations beyond 50 miles. And then there's others in the San Antonio region that are not residents of Universal City who come to participate in either events or golf at Olympia Hills and are spending other money when they're in Universal City. The real estate piece is two impacts. We mentioned earlier the net gain on property tax revenue from the golf premium. Houses, residential housing that sits either immediately proximate to or close to golf courses has been proven over time to have a higher value than a comparably sized or comparable home in another location not immediately proximate to golf courses. The total golf premium on that is not the economic impact because we didn't want to go through and figure out every sale that happened over the last whatever years and try to make an estimate of that. But we thought that the value is being enhanced, and because of that, the appraised value for tax purposes is enhanced, and that allows a net gain to Universal City on your property tax revenue of nearly $500,000. And then you have this Cibolo Crossing development that is ongoing right now, construction of, I think it's going to be 163 new units that are immediately adjacent to and proximate to Olympia Hills. We recognize that given the market that's going on for residential housing right now, that there's a good chance that these units probably would be built anyway, even if the golf course wasn't there. But certainly we have to recognize that the golf premium I just mentioned is going to impact these units as well. And we try to incorporate that into our estimate for the additional value for that development. Okay? Other benefits. We've done a lot of studies over the years at National Golf Foundation about golf and its various benefits to communities, and we wanted to bring those out to the good citizens of Universal City to talk about the healthy lifestyle and public recreation that's being made available by this facility, the social benefits of accessibility, inclusiveness, affordability. It's an affordable public health facility. It's an ideal venue for charities to raise money. We estimated that Olympia Hills itself raised over $579,000 for charities at the various golf and clubhouse events that we hosted there last year. There's a lot of facility programming going on at Olympia Hills, especially youth programming, which is key. It's a key piece of municipal golf in general, and it's certainly being realized at Olympia Hills. And I think the facility adds a lot to your brand, the Universal City brand. When, as an outsider looking in, I think I told you this back in March too, but to me, I really don't see much in Universal City other than, an exit at I-35 and some retail establishments along there, and this golf course along with your housing. And I think it's a really important piece of the Universal City brand. And the staff there, the superintendent, the operators are doing everything they can to sustain environmentally appropriate maintenance practices and to keep this in good working order, which I think is a key piece for your city as well. Okay? So I'll just summarize it all, and we'll get to your questions. I think that the primary impacts of Olympia Hills, I think, are basic and intuitive to you. I mean, obviously, there's the direct spending on operations. The facility itself is generating income. It's generating revenue. It's a pass-through of revenue and expenses that has impact on your community. It's an attractor for non-residents to come to Universal City and spend money while they're there. I think we've demonstrated that. I think the presence of this facility has had a really positive impact on the real estate values in Universal City, and that ultimately leads to higher property tax income for the city, which we've tried to document or estimate for you. And I think overall it enhances the quality of life. It's preserving open space, it's an avenue for public recreation, it's a place for social gathering, it's a venue to raise money, and it's a major contribution to the Universal City brand. So with that, I would say that, golf is a very large industry. The National Golf Foundation did a national study of this, with the assistance again of Dr. Clower in 2023, that showed that the direct spending of golf courses is really only part of the impact of golf. That golf stimulates other spending, whether it's travel, retail, real estate. It stimulates people to make other decisions, economic decisions, and we found that the stimulated spending related to golf is almost as large, or maybe even larger, than the golf industry itself. And I think that Olympia Hills has had that kind of impact on Universal City, and hopefully we were able to provide a fair estimate of that. And with that, I think we'll wrap this up, and we'll get to your questions. I thank you again for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Singer. It was very informative, and we're very, very proud as a city of our staff and all the operations they have at the Olympia Hills Golf and Event Center. Any questions? Mr. Rubal.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. When reading this document, I found it very interesting in that I was trying to assess the actual, got a feedback here, the actual value of the economic impact based on your numbers presented. Okay, and I'm sure we're going to hear a little bit more about this a little bit. So I have a pot up here, and I'm going to two pots, and so you'll be able to hear this. Okay, I'm going to put pennies in this pot for when you said actual in your report, and I'm going to put pennies in this pot for when you said, say, estimated in your report. Actual, estimated. So basically, the report does not give an actual value for the economic impact. It's going to give an estimated value. So far, so good. The next thing that I'd like to do is hold in my hand an economic impact statement also by some place that you might be familiar with. It's called the U.S. General Services Administration, the GSA administration. This scale shows essentially the economic impact or the cost essentially associated with government travel to Universal City based on a per diem basis. And the numbers are extraordinarily different between a validated U.S. government survey and some of the data values that you're providing. So whenever you use your multipliers, okay, type thing, I believe that you probably got those multipliers from a model that was appropriate for where it was developed. But the model for Universal City may be entirely different.
It's
Therefore,
19 hours.
We need to know the accuracy, the precision, and the confidence limit with which you present your estimated values. So, and I have great, basically, I really enjoyed working with you in the prior conference, but essentially I was hoping that you would tell us what the actual impact is. So even when you say fundraisers and cite a number of $579,000 and mention specifically in your report the Hal Baldwin event, there is no, which is essentially for students considering a career in public service. There is no student in Universal City that's eligible for that funding. So basically, yes, charitable events, yes, I don't doubt that, $579,000. But those charitable events are not necessarily charitable events for Universal City, and Universal City is supporting those charitable events with regard to their budget for the golf course by approximately 30%. So every resident contributes about 30% to that revenue, to the revenue going to that's associated with that impact, that charitable impact. And the same thing is true with regard to your estimates of jobs. A lot of these jobs are temporary, and when I work through the numbers, essentially there are different job estimates in different parts of the report. I just remind you that essentially in the city audits, essentially I think we have 26.5 or so for full-time equivalents, of which there are only 12 staff. And you report, for example, in addition to that, there are 3 full-time and benefited people associated with the $500,000 capital improvements. I would challenge you to present a list where there is actually 50.8 jobs that have been created in Universal City that has not only wages, but also a benefit package. When I work your numbers out, I get essentially $16.85 per hour, okay? $16.85 per hour, okay? So basically, if you have a list of that, if you have a list where the people that are going to the golf course are actually coming to the businesses in Universal City, okay, to spend their money, okay, that would be great. But given the fact that you indicate that 80% or more of the people that go to the University City, our golf course, essentially are from our area, okay, the economic impact of that does not necessarily reflect on the businesses along Pat Booker. Finally, sir, I would argue strongly that you haven't presented a case for the premium effects of the golf course within the San Antonio area. We can go up the street to Garden Ridge, and I can show you homes that are worth more than the value of the homes that are associated with the golf course, and they have no golf course. Okay, so basically, I think that's an apples and oranges comparison, particularly when you do your economic analysis and you break down the tax income of our city and you attribute numbers to essentially value added for the golf course, when part of that upper tier that you report in your graphics is the Red Horse area, and their median house price is somewhere around $220,000. The size of their houses are from 900 to about 1,300 square feet. I would challenge you to essentially make a case for that neighborhood, or even my neighborhood that you attribute a 5% increase in property values to. The reason why I moved into my neighborhood was streets, sidewalks, and an elementary school within walking distance, not a golf course. So basically, I challenge not the fact that essentially you don't have you essentially didn't enter data and got an output, but I challenge the fact that there aren't actual numbers associated with the economic impact of the golf course on not the universe of the golf community or our surrounding communities, but in Universal City. And just by the way, in 1991, council established that minimally 80% of the value of the golf course to the community would be going to essentially Selma and Selma at that time. So that was even recognized by council in 1991. And at that time, they were to be co-owners of the golf course. So basically, I understand that's a plan, a model, but does the model fit? Because it doesn't fit the government estimates of what's going on in Universal City. So I'm sorry to be so long, but I did spend a lot of time on it, and I appreciate it, your consideration and replying to some of that, and perhaps Dr. Glauer can input whenever he gets around to his discussion.
Yeah, a lot to unpack into that, but I think that I'll answer a couple of this and then I'll turn it over to my colleague, Dr. Clark, to answer a little bit as well. I just think about the charitable events, you mentioned not necessarily benefit Universal City. I think that's a fair point, but it could. I think the point we're trying to make is that it is a venue to host charitable events, and those charitable events could benefit any charity. It doesn't necessarily have to be something that is in the president or not president of the city. It just so happens the largest event that's held there is the one you talked about for the public policy education. And it just so happens that the majority are not necessarily Universal City residents. And I don't think that precludes that as a venue for raising money, and I think we wanted to include that. As far as the validation versus your government survey, I think we need to look more closely at that. I'm not exactly sure what study you're looking at or what you're showing us, but the general question of estimates versus actual, I think, is just a basic understanding of how work like this is done, and what you've retained us to do was ultimately to provide an estimate of this, a fair estimate based on reasonable inputs that we have explained and modeled it as well. And Terry, I think that we wanted to add a little bit to that as well, as far as the estimate versus actual.
Sure, happy to do so, and thanks folks for allowing me to participate in this. I didn't get a chance to come down to San Antonio this time. I haven't been in San Antonio a few years now. I'm from the Dallas area originally. Let me explain just a little bit about what an input and output, what we call an economic impact analysis, does, is that it is using government data in the sense of data collected by the BEA, Bureau of Economic Analysis and Economic Census, the Census Bureau, Bureau of Labor Statistics, and what it builds is if you will, a series of tables that are about inter-industry interactions. And certainly these are estimates, they are not actuals. And the reason that these type of models were developed actually back in the 1940s is that if I want to look at the impact of what's happening, you have a company or a golf course or anything else, they are spending money, they are buying services, they are buying goods, materials, whatever it takes for them to operate. And what you look at in these models is that if I weren't going to use estimates, if I was going to take the approach of having to do actuals, I would have to go to every one of those vendors and ask them to show me exactly what they have spent, what their sales receipts are, and all of that. And then I'd have to go to their vendors, and if you get down, you see very quickly, you're talking about doing tens of thousands of interviews and surveys to understand that flow. So there was a gentleman by the name of Vasily Leontief that developed a method for doing this at the national level in the 1940s that uses what they call the benchmark IO tables from the Bureau of Economic Analysis and other national governments. Several years later, in the 1950s, a gentleman at the University of Pennsylvania named Walter Izard, who is considered the father of regional science in this country, figured out how to do it at a regional level. So we used the models that were built specifically on the structure of the regional economy. In this case, it's fair, and then look at it small. And I have to take us down. I recognize in the modeling that those indirect and indeed the induced effects that come from the employees of the golf course and the businesses that are providing service to them, those that live in, some of them live in that area, live in University City, some do not, some may live a little bit further away. But what we do with these models and these different models and what they build into them is it's not only trying to do those estimates of inter-industry actions as well as the household spending of employees, it also though adjusts at every point for when the money leaves the area. So, for example, if somebody buys a box of a dozen golf balls at the pro shop at your golf course, those golf balls are not manufactured there. They're not manufactured in Texas for that matter, right? So what actually stays of that purchase is mostly just the retail trade margin with a little bit of transportation, some other things built in. And this goes across all these. The models that we use break the U.S. economy into about 546 separate industry categories. So if you imagine the modeling is very complex in this. So yes, sir, there is absolutely no way practically. If you wanted me to go out and actually give you actual numbers through, I am happy to do this, and we can write a contract for about a $4.5 million contract for me to do. So basically, to sell the golf course and give me all the proceeds, I'll be happy to model for you. But I appreciate that they are indeed estimates, and we clearly recognize them. These are estimates that are used. The in-plan model is widely used. In these, I've used it myself on many occasions across many different kinds of sports, education, industries, various forms of sport and events, all sorts of things. It's well recognized. It's not perfect. But what we also do in these processes is where we can, we try to be conservative. So if you think about the numbers that we had, the number of jobs, we take those direct, they're converted into a variation on a head count. It's not meant to represent full-time equivalents, and that varies. If you're talking about parks, like if you think about, I am currently doing a national study, the National Recreation Park Association, which represents local park operations, local public parks. And if you think about it, many of the jobs that you have, and some of the jobs that you have there at the golf course are seasonal jobs. So it accounts for something for that in both the revenue and in the income. In terms of comparing the spending from the General Services Administration, what they allow government workers to charge, I would say keep in mind that one is the models that we use were specific to your region, for an area of Bexar County. They are also, though, that GSA that you're talking about is simply saying what the federal government has determined that they will allow a federal government worker to spend when they are on travel. It's not meant to even reflect necessarily the marketplace other than the marketplace within a bound that they decided. So in other words, they're not going to let somebody stay at the Hyatt Regency at $450, $500 a night. So those numbers that you have, Ms. Rubal, do not necessarily reflect what's supposed to be market spending. It's just what the federal government allows for reimbursement under authorized government travel for a particular type of spending.
Yeah, one thing to add to that, to what Dr. was just saying, is you mentioned about how a lot of the visitors to Olympia Hills are from other regions in San Antonio, other locations in the San Antonio region, which we have identified and pointed out that a substantial portion, 90 whatever percent of your visitation does come from that. But we also did in our AI, which is a cell phone tracking service that does aggregate tracking of cell phone locations. And we had identified through what they call a shared use location analysis that people who come to Olympia Hills are going to the businesses in and around Universal City. We documented that in our previous report to you. And in this report, we have assumed $5 in spending for those visitors. I mean, I don't know what you can buy nowadays in America, it's only $25 for $5. But that's what we assumed. We felt it was a conservative estimate of $5 of estimate of spending in Universal City by these visitors, just stopping to get a muffin somewhere, or a soda pop at the local gas station, maybe stopping at the Costco that's right around the corner there, whatever it might be, buying some gas. It really wasn't a large amount that we were estimating for that, and that is a big part of what went into this model, is conservative inputs as to what people would spend. But we do know, and we have very good evidence, that people who come to Olympia Hills are frequenting the other businesses in Universal City. I think we were able to document that.
Sir, I believe the preponderance of your evidence is that these visits are day trippers to the, and that might have even been your terminology, day trippers to the golf course. So day trippers essentially doesn't even meet the standard of a 3 meal per day government, if you will, appropriation, which essentially is expanded in report. The other thing that you say, and also Dr. Clower said, is that you present conservative estimates. Well, if you present conservative estimates, what gives you the justification then of taking the best year of the golf course, the 2023 year of the golf course, and then adding the 2024 year capital expenditures and put that in your report as two positives? How is that conservative? Conservative would be minimally to average it or take the worst. That would be the conservative thing to do. So basically, when you use the word conservative, it doesn't match what you did in this report.
Well, I think it's a fair point in terms of the best versus the worst. I think that if you have an ongoing project like the green renovation where the golf course is on temporary greens for a number of months, I did think it was a fair comparison to use that. But the money that they spent to repair those greens was certainly a large capital expenditure. We do like to do these analyses with 1 year in mind, picking a year that we feel reflects what is typical for this property to generate. And I think that's what we did. In that regard, I don't know that necessarily is conservative. I think it's most recent and what is expected. I think the conservative inputs are the assumptions of spending that visitors to the property make in other areas, as well as the estimates of value, the added value added in some of the real estate and other areas of the analysis. So I think that's a fair point, but I think that we wanted to have a specific year to analyze, and I think that the ancillary inputs are reasonable and conservative.
Okay, again, you chose the year the report was in here. We talk about accuracy and precision of the report and the confidence interval for the statistical data that you provide. That cannot be provided by essentially a guesstimate based upon a model that you say yourself isn't based upon the region type thing. The other thing is, the other thing is, if you can explain essentially where you came up with all the tax values. When I look at the income, the revenue generated for the year that you cited, essentially I come up with sales tax that's essentially just a little bit shy of $50,000 from the golf course. 2% of the revenue generated came up to about $49,000-ish. But yet you expanded that to include other tax sources to some astronomical number. Where are the real data for that?
Well, again, I think that you have a lot of economic activity being generated by the facility itself. And there is us, so we have that actual data. The other impacts are the transactional and the ongoing economic activity that the facility is generating for the area. Some of it is direct and some of it is indirect, but the employees that spend their paid checks, the visitors come to the area and play golf or attend an event at Olympia Hills, and as we have shown through our cell phone tracking software that we subscribe to, that they frequent other locations in Universal City. That generates sales tax revenue there as well. And ultimately, that's what leads to the estimate, which I would take issue with the word astronomical. I don't think that that's the case. I mean, it certainly is a lot for a small city like Universal City. But we're not talking about multiple millions, a few $100,000 generating the sales tax with a quarter of it is generated from the facility itself. I think it represents a reasonable estimate for this impact.
Just worked it out. Okay, for $3 million, that's $60,000. And then the year you cited, it was less than $3 million of revenue generated by the golf course. So something's wrong with your numbers somewhere. 2% of the earned revenue is not that, okay? So basically, and let's talk about the data that you got from Placer AI. How many visits in the golf course were there, and how many visits were there to the restaurants, the residents, or the business establishments in Universal City? Okay? So when I took a look at that by data provided by the city manager for a 4-day period, a weekend period where business is pretty high, the number of people going to the businesses came to 2 places, a bar, and I forgot what the other place was, but essentially less than 8% of the visits to the golf course during the period of time that AI reported that. Well, less than 8%. Okay, and that was just my snapshot for the data that I was given. But essentially, this big economic impact has to be proven. It has to be accurate, it has to be precise, and it has to have a confidence interval associated with the data that's being presented.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we have presented it at 2 levels. I think one is what I call the intuitive level, and the other is to try to give you a fair estimate of what that intuitive level ultimately produces. I think that the facility itself has an enormous footprint, using your words. You just said $3 million of revenue going through to that property, pretty much close to that every year. Maybe a little more some years, maybe a little less other years. I think that's a substantial economic footprint for a small city like Universal City. And I think it's also reasonable to assume that the visitors that come in from out of the area to frequent the property are going to stop at other places in Universal City and spend some money. We assume a small amount, but we assume that there is impact to that, and that ultimately translates to both direct revenue for those businesses, which leads them to have additional staff and jobs, and ultimately leads to additional tax revenue. And I think that as we have demonstrated in our national research, and I don't find too much opposition to the general assumption that the presence of golf courses has a positive impact on residential real estate that's in proximity to it. We've documented that in a number of studies over the years. And I think when you put those 3 things together, I think it's fair that this facility has impact. It has economic impact on Universal City. And we try to estimate it as best we can using the tools that we have. And as Dr. Keller mentioned, I don't know if it's reasonable for us to give you an actual on that. I think that may be beyond the scope of this, and you may find it cost prohibitive. But we have found that governments and government agencies, the federal government, the state, local agencies, have accepted this type of research as a fair estimate for what this is producing. And if you want to, look along margins, some of these things, a few thousand here and there, what may or may not be actually happening, I think it's reasonable. But I think the bigger picture is that Olympia has an impact on Universal City. I don't think that that's in dispute. So the question then becomes how much, And I think we've done the best we can to estimate that for you.
Mr. Dahl, you'll have. Okay.
Thank you, thank you.
I think it's obvious that you're not in agreement with the economic report, so I'll allow somebody else to speak. Any other questions? Mr. Vaughan.
Thank you. I think I understand the concept of we spend money at the golf course, it goes in somebody's pocket, they spend it somewhere else, and that multiplies, and you kind of have that multiplier concept. I guess where I'm struggling with is I'm trying to figure out, should we continue to put taxpayer money into the golf course to subsidize it? And so when I'm trying to evaluate that, I'm figuring out, well, what is the opportunity cost? So in my mind, if we were to spend the 1.2-ish million that we budgeted for 2025 on something else, like streets, for example, that would have the same kinds of economic impact with potentially some kind of multiplier involved as well. Would that be a fair statement?
Yeah, so certainly if we spent $1 million to, of city expenditures on something else, there would be an impact of that. In many of those cases, those jobs would not be local residents or area, folks that are working at the golf course on a regular, it'd be a construction crew comes in, lays payment and leaves. But this analysis, look, it's fair for you guys and appropriate for all of you to be thinking of what else you can do with any money. But as I understand, this is one where the subsidy changes from year to year, as they do in many of these operations, but that it's actually been pretty close, and in fact, revenue positive in some cases. Certainly, street expenditures don't generate that unless you want to start putting tolls on the road. You guys don't want to get into that. I see that enough. I saw that enough in North Texas before I moved up to the Northern Virginia area. But that's something that is beyond the scope of what we can do with this. It's certainly something that if you wanted to lay out a lot of scenarios of what if we spend on this and do comparisons, that's doable, but that's not within the scope of what you asked us to do so far.
Right, and I'm not asking you to give us any numbers, just conceptually, there's an economic benefit from that kind of process as well. So to me, the multiplier effect is a little bit squishy. So for me, I'm looking more at what are the more tangible direct benefits. And so I think you've answered one of those tonight, which was Mr. Singer said 80,000 is what the golf course collects in sales tax. So I'll take that. You said that the golfers will spend about 720,000 elsewhere in the city, which I would say that's another 15,000 or so in sales tax that we would be seeing from that, just directly, not the multiplier rewash of the money. So then the third piece would be the property tax. And so I'm wondering if you could speak on that just a little bit. So you estimated that we're collecting an additional 500,000 in property tax, and a large component of that is across 1604 from us. So Capano Ridge and Springwood, I'm sure you don't know these neighborhoods by heart, but they're not adjacent to the golf course, but we're still attributing a 5% premium on them. I'm wondering if you can speak to that and try to help me understand why those neighborhoods might have a golf premium when they're not really in proximity.
Yes, I think that as I mentioned, what we looked at 3 levels for that. The homes that were immediately immediately adjacent to the golf course had 50% premium applied to them. The ones that were in proximity but they didn't have a view or were immediately adjacent to the golf course were at a 10% premium, and the others that were part of the Olympia Hills branding were given a 5% premium. So I think that it's the signage, the theme, the overall branding of the Olympia Hills neighborhood with the golf course at the centerpiece of that was the reason for that.
Okay, but I'm sure you can acknowledge there's room for estimation there in terms of how much the golf course impact might be. That'd be a fair statement. It's an estimate. And so then the last question is on the golf premium itself. So can you clarify compared to what? So if you had a home that was adjacent to the golf course, you've given it a 15% premium. Obviously, if there was a storage unit that was constructed behind it, I would agree you probably lose that 15% premium. But if you had a very nice green belt behind it, I would argue that you may not lose any of that premium. And so I'm curious what your thoughts are on that or how you would help me quantify that.
Yeah, there's there is some premium for the new management to the parks and open space as well. We found through our studies that the golf premium is more significant. And Terry does the studies on that too, the park and I mean, there certainly would be some, I think that's a fair assessment.
Okay, all right, thank you, Mayor.
Any other questions from the board, the council? Yes, Mayor Pro Tem.
I was going to say, this was kind of exactly what I expected to get. So thank you for trying to quantify this. I didn't ever expect to have actual numbers that could be vetted out and verified. What I expected to have told in here was the story about the positive impact and the ways that it impacts our community. I think we can get lost in trying to verify their numbers, but what I did when I read through this is I listened to the story, and I listened to the fact that it expanded our brand as a community, that we were better off because we had the golf course. I found it interesting that of the 44,000 rounds of golf in 2024, that only 2,000, a little over 2,000 of those were from residents paid for at the resident rate. That's significant. That means that 42,000 rounds were played by people outside of our community coming in and spending money, even at just the golf course. That's significant. It is bringing people to our community. And I also looked at the nonprofit. Those people could spend their money anywhere in San Antonio. They could host a nonprofit event anywhere. They're choosing to come and spend the money at our golf course, the Olympia Hills Golf Course. And I think that really tells the story of the value add. And of course, I'm not disputing the fact greenbelts and golf courses definitely have a premium on real estate. They make those properties more desirable. People are willing to pay a little bit more because they have an added pop to their property. And I don't think is it 15% exactly? I don't know, but I definitely know there's a pop. And so I appreciated this being articulated in such a way that it gives people ways to consider how the golf course provides value to our community outside of just money spent there. So thank you very much for providing this report. It was very insightful.
Thank you. I might just comment on something that you're talking about. Most of the vast majority of the rounds are being played by people who are non-residents. One of the things that we talk about oftentimes in sports venues and tourism venues for that matter is recaptured spending. The other folks that are residents of your city that are playing golf, at least they get to play in town as opposed to taking their money elsewhere. So in many respects, when you're thinking about it, you get to capture the full value of it. And in some respects, I would say that sometimes there's a substitution spending effect. But if you have local residents who want to play golf, it's very nice for them to be able to do so within their own confines where their tax dollars and their spending are benefiting the city and the businesses in the city.
Absolutely.
Mr. Clower, Mr. Singer, and Mr. Golden, thank you ever so much for a very thorough report and review. Please come back. I know if I remember correctly, you guys have also done a few analysis with the United States Air Force golf program.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we talked about that last time I was there. The U.S. Air Force is like the largest single owner of golf courses in the world, and then they 67 golf courses, including some that we get to look at. And it was great talking with you about that. It's kind of a hidden jewel. There's a lot of really good Air Force golf all around the country, including in Texas.
One known fact is that Mr. Singer actually worked with the Air Force program, and which was also some of my students and some of the folks that used to be assets in the Air Training Command and for the Air Force. So we actually know some of the same people there, and they're the ones that run the Air Force golf program. And that kind of validates the program for me also. Thank you ever so much. I'll turn it over to Ms. Turner.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Singer and the team. So the next thing we have up is I had asked Randy to do kind of a streets project update, if you could make it short. We want to talk about projects we've just finished, projects that we've just started, and projects that are coming up very soon. Remember, everybody wants their street done until their street goes under construction. So go ahead.
All right, just a real quick recap. Our Kitty Hawk Emergency Service Road, we anticipate we're going to be completed with that by next month in July. So we're hoping to have that access road to the ETJ opened up for the residents on the other side of the creek there. National in East Langley, National is pretty much done. We got the blacktop down on the first 2 phases. Now they started on the East Langley from Pat Booker Road to Trudy. That is phase 3, and then from Trudy to East Langley is phase 4. So we're anticipating to have that project wrapped up in December of this year. So so that one's going pretty smoothly. Our $6 million street bond, that one there had a little bit of setback. We're at 60%. In the past with our street bond projects, utility locates, we always have to go in there and find out if there's utilities underneath the road that would have to be relocated. And you got to find the depth so the engineers can design on what's going to be relocated. Typically, those utility companies took care of that for us. Now they're no longer doing that. So that's a big problem with me. That's an argument I got to have with them. But it was going to delay our project, so I had to send our staff out there to locate their utilities, which we're not responsible for. But we had to get our engineers some numbers. So those numbers have now been provided, so they're back on track and to get the design done. So I'm hoping about 4 more months we will get the plans done, and then hopefully out in October sometime, October, November, we start putting this thing out to bid. That is my update. The Kitty Hawk Walmart, here in July, they are going to, a couple more weeks, they will be wrapping that up. We'll get all the striping done, and the roundabout into Walmart will be opened up. So about 30 more days, hopefully. And my CDBG, we're going to get out to bid here pretty soon, which will be for Flintstone. So that one I don't have out to bid yet, but that one's our next one for our CDBG grant that we got.
Any questions?
Yes. Persia is the one that's coming up quick, right? I didn't know if I missed it in there, or that's the one that.
Persia is a drainage project.
So then the streets come.
Yeah, but Persia is part of the bond package of the $6 million. So just a recap on the $6 million, it is Travis, Persia, Old Commerce Trail, Medicine Rock, Longswood, Inkswood, Gamblewood, Crosswood, and Churchwood.
And you said in your summary, October is kind of when we're thinking about going after bid. Is that what you said?
That is the end goal, yes, is to try to get out between October and November, is to get this thing out.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions?
Yeah, one more.
Mr. Bear?
Who's responsible for teaching everybody how to do the roundabout? I've asked this question that I did. I want to make sure, because I did the one over somewhere else, and I sat there with my daughter, and I was playing on my phone, and I looked up, oh, good Lord. So it's scary. And are we going to train people how to use a roundabout? Is there going to be something on the cool TV channel? Is there going to be flyers? Is Michael going to stand out there with the...
Well, there are some in Texas. There is a 15-mile-an-hour limit in the roundabout. I'll tell you that now. But we'll see if there's going to be any problems or not. Well, in the initial, until we get the Chick-fil-A driveway open, I'm going to have a barrier there. So you're either going to go into Walmart or you're going to keep going.
I'm going to get lost in one.
Turn it over now.
Yes.
I do have one question, right? For the emergency access road, first of all, I went down part of it, and it's a beautiful road.
Yes.
Why are there street lights there?
Well, as you know, as you go down, there's a cliff.
No, yeah.
Yes. So the lighting is to protect the folks that are the emergency vehicles going through there, the trucks themselves. But as you know, the first part of it is going to be a trailhead for the parking there. So we do have lighting for that. But when you go down there at night, you know, it's pretty dark. But we want them folks to know there is a little bit portion of guardrail that goes up. But after that, that's the steep part of the cliff there. But after that, there is an incline there. So yes, it's a safety.
I only thought I was privileged to go down a little way, so I haven't looked at the whole thing yet. So
I put in 2 street lights down in that section there, and it's on a curve. The other thing is that when you got vehicles on a curb, we gotta have that for the.
So Bear drives a gray Chevy truck, so if you see him circling, you know it's Bear. Yeah, we were almost taken out in New Braunfels on the roundabout. That worries me. Randy, real quick, I remember when you were doing the street behind Red Horse Park, you were talking about the cost of that. How much street does $1 million buy?
Not much. I can tell you right now in the budget that we put in, we're fixing to do Flintstone. So Flintstone, if you know the street, Flintstone and Westway, it's a big U, right?
Mm-hmm.
So half of the U will cost me $900,000
Okay.
to do, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, ETJ?
Thank you. Well, Michael's presentation is coming up. So believe it or not, almost 10 years ago, we signed non-annexation development agreements with all of the cities ETJ off of 1518, with the exception of Orchard Park, which has since developed and has been annexed into the city. In January, those agreements expire, so this council has some decisions you have to make. So rather than actually throw this on you and have you make all those same decisions in one night, we're going to give you a little precursor this evening. We have some public hearings and public notices that we have to do. So this is kind of your pre-education, and then we're going to come back again and do this presentation with a lot more detail, and then we'll guide you through your discussion and your decision making. So, precursor to what's coming. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have some ladies in the back.
Absolutely. Extraterritorial jurisdiction, otherwise known as the ETJ. So the ETJ is basically within 1 mile of city boundaries, and so the ETJ, as City Manager Turner mentioned, is on the other side of the creek, and you're probably most familiar with the Orchard Park subdivision, which formerly was in the ETJ and was annexed about 6 years ago. So again, here is the boundary of the city along with the ETJ, surrounded in black. Again, east of 1518, east of the creek. And so there are a total of 142 acres remaining in Universal Cities ETJ that consists of 12 properties. And about 6 of those properties are in the floodplain. Those are on the west side, or the left side if you're going north, 1518. Those are adjacent to the creek as well. And those are identified in the light blue color. So as City Manager Turner mentioned, we did enter into several non-annexation agreements in 2016. Those have a 10-year term. They expire in January. And so we have 2 potential projects that would like to take place in the ETJ. The Meritage project, which you have seen a concept plan presentation by that company, that developer. And basically, it takes up the entire Beager property, which is the majority of the ETJ. And then on the west side of 1518, we have been talking to one of those property owners who would like to install a communication tower, a cell tower on their property. And I'll get into that in just a little bit. So some of the considerations are, we have the comprehensive plan update that is ongoing. We expect to finish that by the end of November of this year. As part of that analysis, the ETJ comes into play. And so there will be a decision made by City Council as to whether or not you want to basically continue with annexations within the ETJ, specifically with regard to those different non-annexation agreements, whether you'd like to let them expire, lapse, or renew them. There are some advantages and disadvantages for annexing those properties, and we'll get into those in just a minute. But I wanted to point out that part of the comprehensive plan update does consider those properties in the ETJ. So some of the benefits of annexing. Higher level of emergency services, obviously. Randy just talked about the cross of the creek, and so that will benefit any development that happens on that side, on the other side of the creek. The city's spent about $2 million so far on that creek crossing, and we do expect to finish that in July. Utilities, there's a water line main extension that was completed. So there's a water main going up and down 1518 essentially. That costs about $1.17 million. Street and light maintenance, obviously health protection. So they'll fall under the city's rules and regulations from a building code standpoint specifically. Increased property values, obviously that comes with being part of the city. It gives them lower insurance rates and also avoids municipal government. Even though they might not know that they're in Universal City, the folks in Orchard Park. So some of the drawbacks. Increased city personnel, emergency services. However, at this time, no additional staffing is needed based on our projections. JBSA, so whatever is developed in or on that side in the ETJ, there are a majority of the property falls within one of the ACU zones. Then there's several properties that we already showed you are in the floodplain, and then there's always the potential that 1518 will be widened, so that will impact those properties as well. So the process, there's voluntary annexation, and so the legal process is spelled out here. Obviously, we have to notify folks in the newspaper as well as notices to the neighbors, physical mailings. There will be a public hearing for the annexation. Annexation ordinance requires 2 readings. We'll have to amend the city boundaries if they are annexed, and then they're automatically rezoned to R1. And then if there's a further rezoning that's requested, that will take place as well. If you do not annex any of these properties, there's nothing you have to do. I'm talking about the ones that are that have the non-annexation agreement specifically. No action necessary. They can just expire. So if the land is not annexed, do we have any control over those land uses? Essentially, from a zoning standpoint, we do not. But since we do have a water line, there are certain provisions that they would have to connect, and we have to provide them with water service. And so I wanted to go back to one of the potential projects, and that is the cell tower proposal. And essentially, that is the Lovett property. And if you look at Maskey Road, let's see if I can get the cursor down there. So we're talking about, this is Maskey. And then this property right here. So one couple owns these 3 properties. The property that they're talking about having a cell tower on is this one, right at the edge. Okay, so one of the things that they're going to have to contend with is they're going to have to get the FCC, FAA approvals, as well as JBSA, because a portion of that property falls within the ACU's, one of the ACU zones. So we'll have to get approval or sign off from JBSA. So more specifically, our zoning code does provide the guidelines for the approval process. And so that property would have to be annexed into the city. They would have concurrent applications for the rezoning, again, R1, then to our either C4 or C5, because that is what our zoning code requires that district to be. They would also have to get a specific use permit. We'd have public hearings at P&Z, and they would make a recommendation to City Council. And if it's approved, then they have to submit for their building permit as well as their floodplain development permit. And so there are specific requirements identified in our code that they would have to contend with as well. And that is all we have.
And just a little precursor so that you know it's coming. Just think about it, and we'll be back again we have to do all the required notices before we bring it before City Council, but because it is a big decision, we wanted to give you something to think about while we're preparing to go through all the legal processes.
I can hang out and I'll talk to you offline about it.
Sounds great, thank you, sir.
Any other questions for staff? Yes, Rubal.
So basically tonight, we're going to hear about water, a little bit later, Michael. And basically, we know about the restrictions associated with Randolph Air Force Base in that area. There ultimately will be some sort of a plan that weighs the greater than $3.2 million investment in the properties over there, and the benefit for tax back to the city to pay for the additional services. So it becomes very complicated from that issue. The other thing that's a complication, as you know, type thing is the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan is projecting that we, depending on which plan, okay, are going to be at 30,000, 36,000, or 40,000 people, okay, which obviously has an impact on the 22,000 people that we're going to hear about a little bit later tonight for water projection needs in our water plan type thing. So basically, we need to know the benefits as well as the cost, okay, of the options out there. And the other thing that I think is very important is we have to understand that there may be a time for Universal City to say, we're not going to grow, we're going to develop and mature a city within. So I think, you know, there's a balance, and given the fact that we have those three comprehensive plans that we're sort of selecting through the water, the critical need for water that's going to be associated with all of those plans, and this extra jurisdictional area, which is going to irrigate more land than we've ever irrigated, you know, land that's never been irrigated before. It's going to capitalize on our water resources. So, like you're aware of all the complex motions that are happening. Just let us know the pluses and minuses of those options, so we don't try to have to figure them out up here.
Of course.
Thanks.
We give you as much information as we can. I just will just close by saying that that property owner that would like to put the cell tower, they're probably going to make a formal request to have a decision, at least have you consider making a decision well before the end of the year. So we would like to give them some direction if possible. Again, is the city council open to annexing those properties? We want to kind of hold off, or do we just want to let it lapse and stay in the county? Not looking for an answer right now, because we might be asking you in the near future.
Thank you, Michael.
Right. That portion is finished. Let's go into city manager announcements. And
In the interest of time, I'll pass.
okay, I'll start it off with the mayor's announcement. I've got a thank you note from Mr. Neville's wife, Carol. Our family would like to thank everyone involved in the voting, naming, and dedication of Neville Park. It was such a gratifying general move, and the ceremony was superb. Every aspect was perfection. The reception was such a generous one. We also like to include Randy Lensman, who fitted the playground as well as the clubhouse. Thank you to the entire staff, Carol and family. We appreciate that. And actually, she is being in the area, and she was doing very well. The last time I talked to her was 2 weeks ago. One other thing is that you have a events calendar that we're going to need your input on whether or not if you're going to attend the TML, newly elected officials training. This is not just for those people that have just got elected in this route. It's actually ongoing training, and it's provided free of charge with TML. Information is there. And what we're thinking that you might want to put on your calendar, TML is going to be doing their fall conference in October. I don't exactly remember the dates, but it's usually 3 days, and it's Wednesday through Friday. Normally, it's well worth the time. Again, it's the conference is free to a degree, but there is hotel and travel involved. But we go as a team, can save on that one. I'd like to also mention that yesterday, the Northeast Methodist Medical Center celebrated their 40th anniversary. They also used the time to dedicate with a 3D imaging of a new addition that's coming up is a 3-story tower, part of the hospital. And it highlights that our area, northeast area, is really become a medical plaza or mecca. So we've got the University Health across in Selma is being built. The medical center here, they've expanded across the road already, and a lot of growth going in there. And we have the opportunity to, I guess, reap the benefits by being in the local area. Plus, everybody knows how doctors love to play golf. With that, policy is, Mr. Vaughan, you had the invitation tonight, and I'll always start with you for council comment.
All right, thank you, Mayor. I did really like the idea of the flags. I'd love to see the EDC take that up as an agenda item. I also like the comments about the First Amendment. I'm always big on trying to make sure that we protect people's First Amendment. There's always room for improvement. We have a few things that I think we can iron out. One of them in particular was just maybe amending the minutes from May 6th. So I would move that we reconsider the minutes of May 6th, 2025 at our July 15th, 2025 regular meeting agenda.
May I make a suggestion you make that motion when we come to the consent agenda?
Sure.
So, no, it's not on the agenda, so he's not asking for it to be approved this evening. He's asking for it to be on the July 15th agenda as a line item for consideration.
In that case, then I need a second.
I'll second that.
Okay. Any discussion? Call for the vote. Call for the vote?
Yes.
No.
Councilmember Vaughan,
Aye.
Councilmember Goolsby,
All right.
Mayor Pro Tem Fitzpatrick,
Aye.
Councilmember Putt,
Aye.
Councilmember Rubal,
Aye.
Councilmember Shelby.
Aye.
Motion carried.
That's all, Mayor. Thank you.
Mr. Shelby, we'll go with you.
Just happy to be here, sir.
Good.
That's all I've got.
I'm going to take Shelby's time.
Wait a
Yes.
minute, hold on.
This is great. In fact, I've gotten a couple messages from some people who've been driving through Thousand Oaks. There's a neighborhood in Thousand Oaks, and they're putting their veterans pictures up, and they're working, I talked to them, they're working with the American Legion and with the VFWs. So Memorial Day, Veterans Day, they're putting these up. So thank you. I think this is wonderful. Randy, we had major pipe leak in my cul-de-sac, and those guys worked for 10 hours. Granted, I know they were 2 shifts, but it was hot, and they worked for 10 hours, and they were an amazing crew. And please thank them for us, because they are the unsung workers in this city. It was really something. I just want to say, I want to thank all the directors. Budget season, we know how hard it is. We know that you're really racking your brains to keep it down to, just give us what you need. I appreciate it. I just hope that everyone here on the dais trust the process. Let's not get into minutia. We are here to look at the big picture. If we have small pictures, please take advantage of meetings with them that we can ask all of our questions. So when we come out here, we're looking at the big picture because it's a lot. And that's all I have. Oh, no, one more. I got a letter that was really singing Ed Long's praises from animal control. There was a family that was trying to move out with 3 children, a pregnant wife, and 2 dogs, and there was a very sick wild animal that was stuck in their yard, and nobody could move in or out of the house, and Ed showed up and saved the day, and I was written a very lovely letter about him. So congratulations to Ed Long for just being Ed Long. So thank you, sir.
Mr. Ralph.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, kudos to the staff of our city for being active participants in the Northeast Partnership Program with other members of the dais. I attended that for the first time. I was amazed at the amount of potential cooperation there is between communities from here to Seguin type thing within that partnership. And it was a great insight into that I had not had before. So kudos to them, and the staff of the Universal City is very much respected by every member of the other cities that I talked to during that presentation that they had. Number 2, the budget process. I would like to especially thank all the members of the staff, and of course, our Chief Financial Officer and Kim Turner. They have, for the first time in the history of Universal City, I believe, projected a budget for 5 years. Now, they're budget projections. The council understands that, but it's a great step forward for our city in order to do that. So the fire department doesn't essentially have a last minute appeal for 2 new fire trucks. It's getting into the long-term budget cycle. I thank them very, very, very much for that. Now, we're still going to argue in session about essentially keeping the projected budget for this year as low as possible to save taxpayers' property taxes, but that's another thing. The other thing, Mr. Mayor, is I am asking for council's consideration to support a town hall meeting for the council meeting period of 7 July, for which there's no council meeting schedule type thing. And I would encourage members of the dais to consider participating in a panel that would, one, listen to the input of this. July 1st, I'm sorry. Essentially, one, listen to the input of the residents, and two, have a friendly pro and con discussion with regard to the directing the venue tax to the general fund that we're going to find out is very important for our infrastructure needs. To raise the question about term limits and better district representation from our community now that we've grown by leaps and bounds. And finally, of course, we want to listen to the residents about where they see our funding needs should be. We're concerned about safety. We're concerned about infrastructure. Let's define them so that essentially it's not just one council member talking, it's all our community's input into that process. That's not limited to 3 minutes at the general council budget workshop type thing by the residents. So I would like to put on the next agenda a request for whatever members of the dais that would like to participate, a pro and con discussion in a town hall meeting format that will be the first one that Universal City has had. And I would also like to recommend that some banner waiver that we've heard tonight might consider being the essentially host for that meeting and directing questions. So we're looking for a good host person that would play the role of just introducing topics and he now got it. He's now got it. Yeah, so if you'd consider that, appreciate it.
So Mr. Rubal, just a consensus that I've received, because you put your request in about a week ago through an email.
Yes.
And I've gotten some feedback just in consensus, and most of the council members feel that that's what they've been doing for the last year. They'll walk in the streets, they've been talking with our citizens. They are pretty well aware that we need safety and the amenities and what the people want. Those are the #1 priorities. They also want it for the lowest possible price, but they also realize that there's a price there. And if you want to hold or sponsor a town hall meeting, that is your privilege. But I get consensus from the, correct me if I'm wrong, council, but if y'all want to vote.
I'm otherwise engaged. I will not be able to.
So you're welcome to host one if you would like to, is what I'm saying.
May I ask for a second, Mr. Mayor, for the motion to have a town hall meeting hosted by council, and whether they want to participate or not, that's fine. So basically what I'd like is a vote on the record of the council members' view on whether they want to meet with the residents. That's what I would like.
Okay, make a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we adopt a resolution to have a town hall meeting hosted by as many members as council as will participate for the residents to put input into their city on the available council meeting night in July.
Second?
I'd be happy to participate.
Is that a second?
I mean, I think you told him that he doesn't need council approval.
He's making an official motion, so we need to either need a second or we wouldn't give up.
Okay, I'll second it then.
Okay. Any discussion? Yes.
Thank you, sir. So I'm just gonna make sure I understand what you're looking for. Because, you know, I'm just trying to make sure I understand, because like that fellow up there said, that's a lot to unpack. You put a lot into this. When I was reading the message board, I saw, and you were talking about a budget type thing, but tonight you added a little bit more. You might explain that a little bit more to me?
I wasn't sure you read it.
Thank you. Don't get used to it.
Yeah, because I think the response. Okay. Yes, essentially, the budget funding needs would be a significant part of that presentation. I think along with that, we have to face whether that 1.8 now, $5 million, okay, that's venue tax should go to the general fund to be distributed for the city needs. And it doesn't exclude the golf course, for God's sake. Let's put it out there for residents' consideration. They have to vote on it if it occurs anyhow, if we make that change. So let's face the issue and let's move forward.
So you only want to talk about budget and venue tax? You said a lot more.
Budget, venue tax, I'd like to discuss pros and cons of term limits amongst the council and get citizens' input and better district representation so that all council members are not at large type things, so that areas that have historically not had a council member are able to put somebody up here that provides input from their area.
Before we go for a vote, can I give a clarification, City Manager?
I'm sorry, sir?
Before we go for a vote or for discussion, a clarification on venue tax, which is also referred to as a resale tax that is designated for specific purposes. Can retail tax be used for road construction?
Can it be used for what?
As a primary source for road construction?
No.
Okay, just want to make sure that was in there, because that was mentioned in the discussion. Okay, Mr.
Okay, thanks, sir. Yeah. Okay, so basically, budget funding, so
Term limits, better districting.
Better districting, that was the last one, better districting. So,
better district representation.
All right, so number one, I feel like you're mad at me when you throw term limits out there, but whatever. The budget funding, we're going to be having a meeting to talk about all that anyway, but I mean, that's part of the budget process, right? That's when we have the citizens to be heard. So the venue tax discussion, I have it all the time with people when they stop in and talk to me. Not just people that, not just people that stop in all the time, but anyway. Term limits, I've heard that batted around. I would be willing to have a discussion on it. And then better districting, again, I've heard that battered around, and I would be happy, very happy to have a discussion on it. So thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I'm done with my conversation.
Just a couple things. I feel like we talk about those in regular meetings. I'm not sure that we need to have a town hall. but I in particular don't know that we need to rush a town hall if we feel like this is conversations that we want to have. Like, let's table this right now, is my opinion, and talk through it as a group or at another agenda item to talk about the idea of, is there value in having a town hall? Do we feel, but I feel like every 2 weeks or the first and the third Tuesday, people have the opportunity to have a conversation with us. We're interacting with people. I don't feel like those things aren't going to be had, but let's decide as a group if we want to have a town hall, but let's not rush it. And I feel like this is being rushed because the topic has changed. I mean, you just keep adding things that would be valued to add. And I'm not saying those are inappropriate conversations to have. I just don't want to have very quickly from just talking about the budget and getting residents' input on budget to having a whole litany of things to talk about. And I think I'd rather have it better thought out before we did something like that.
Mayor, thank you. Let's limit it to budget. What do you all think about? Let's limit it to budget. So if that's your consideration, let's have the first town hall meeting about residents' input into the budget process, where they can talk about their infrastructure needs, where they can talk about basically their property tax values, safety, and so forth. But that's fine with me. Let's have a town hall meeting to get the residents' input into this, to have an agenda, which has to be done for a town hall meeting, so that we can have a pro and con discussion about these issues with the residents' input.
Ms. Putt?
I think it's too soon. I think it needs to be planned out, but I've already made arrangements, so I know for a fact that I won't be able to attend on July 1st. So, I mean, if we're going to do it.
Just call for a vote.
Okay.
I got one more thing to say. I was all about it when we were going to get into the last half of your stuff, the budget stuff. Everybody has a chance to come up and talk, so dang it, Bernie.
So trying to please her doesn't please you.
Let's call for the vote.
So just to clarify, this is a motion to have the first parameters for the town hall that were presented, that included, I believe, 4 topics?
Yes.
Okay. Councilmember Rubal?
Yes.
Councilmember Vaughan?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Fitzpatrick?
No.
Councilmember Goolsby?
Aye.
Councilmember Putt?
No.
Councilmember Shelby?
No.
We have a tie.
I'm going to go with my gut and say no.
Motion failed.
However, with the no, Mr. Rubal, you are authorized to have and host the town hall meeting at your discretion. Unfortunately, I'm not going to obligate city staff for that. There's no way that I can obligate city staff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for that opportunity, and I will take that opportunity, Mr. Mayor.
Continuation with council members' comments. Mr. Goolsby.
Dang. My head's stuck. I love these. Let's make these happen. Woo. Okay, that's all.
I'm sorry, gosh, I got lost in all of that. I wanted to just call out Public Works and our first responders for all of the things that they did during the bad weather last week. Tremendous work. I know the golf course took a tremendous hit, and there was a lot of people throwing in to make sure everything was cleaned up, and I appreciate all of the extra efforts. And I just very quickly want to say our PD and fire were awesome with the kids at the camp. That was such a great experience to watch it go through fruition and have those kids get their experience. But just to see how excited our fire guys and the PD were. PD has asked for an extra day. So, I mean, they're really kind of throwing in and making it very special. And it was the first year for one of the young firemen to take over for them. So I see them investing in this as an ongoing program that we're going to do. And I'm just thrilled that it's taken off and kind of really grown into itself. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And that will conclude the announcements. Let's go with consent agenda. All matters listed under this are considered by routine city council and will be enacted in one motion. Do I hear a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? Call for the vote.
Was Councilmember Vaughan the second?
Yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
thank you. Councilmember Goolsby?
Aye.
Councilmember Vaughan?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Fitzpatrick?
Aye.
Councilmember Putt?
Aye.
Councilmember Rubal?
I don't quite understand. If I could get a clarification, please, Mr. Mayor. Essentially, this consent agenda that we're approving does not or does include the motion to reconsider the minutes of the May 6th.
It doesn't.
It does not. That's going to be an agenda for May 15th. I mean, July 15th.
I see. Okay, thank you. Yes.
Councilmember Shelby?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Action items. Gentlemen, our apologies for being here so long, but thank you for sticking it out. Resolution 985-2025, Guadalupe Appraisal District Land Acquisition.
Let's get right into it. How about a presentation, Maribel? Thank you. Thank you.
Mayor Maxwell, council, and the city manager, thank you for having me this evening. I'm here today after about a year's worth of due diligence by myself and our board of directors. About a year ago, just to give you a quick backstory, we looked at, I brought to my board members that, our facility, we exhausted the functional utility, this functional space that we have at 3000 North Austin Street. It's the original structure as well as an add-on that was done in 2008. But what I'm about to show you is a culmination of what took place during this period of time. And then on May 7th, when I brought to my board the final proposal, they went ahead and passed a resolution, which allowed me to then begin to speak to the entities that we serve. As a appraisal district, we're a political subdivision. We can't levy a tax or issue bonds for capital expenditures. We are funded by the entities that we serve through their application, which is based off of the levy that we appraise for them, overall. The value we appraise, and then of course the levy amount. So, obviously we do a lot more than appraising. We currently administer over 87,000 appeals. Thankfully not 87,000 appeals. 87,000 active tax exemptions. But down to that point though, what started this last year in April was the fact that we've averaged 24,000 appeals. As a growing district, we're part of the MSA of San Antonio. We bordered and so a lot of the growth is coming towards us as well. And this was causing potential timing issues with getting you all your certified roll by July 25th of each year. So the impact obviously for Guadalupe, I know you guys are here in Bear, but as a split district, we do serve that portion on the other side of 1518 for y'all. But we've reached over 2,000. The quick aerial here, when I started with the district in 2008, actually that's when they just finished, oops, can I go back? Sorry. Even the presentation's like, let's go, move it. But anywho, so you can see on the right there, nothing's changed other than a parking lot to make it a bit safer for the property owners and staff as they came in and out during the high traffic periods, which is generally during that April to August timeframe. We are facing the current facility challenges, and here's like an image of our lobby during the appeal season last year. It hasn't gotten any better, of course. We just went over. We finally determined exactly how many timely filed appeals we had this year, and we're at just over 22,000. ADA issues, obviously, with this lobby. It's hard maneuverability.
Battery go.
Yeah, she just typed in.
Oh, no worries. But, there we go. There's the parking lot. You can kind of see this is during that same time. In and out, there's only one entrance for egress, and it's difficult coming off of what's becoming a very busy 123 there. Actually, that's business. Here's our workstation, just some images of the interior of our current facility that we're using. You're going to see that obviously there's very little space. This is the one that my staff gives me the hardest issues with, is the fact that we only have 4 single occupancy for the 41 employees, as well as the public when they're there for the hearings. Our IT, we've definitely grown there, over 200 devices within a 200 square foot area with the network servers and everything else in there. To save taxpayer funds, anything under 1,000 units, we try to do that in-house. But of course, it's very cramped in there with that. Insufficient break room. When the board, ARB, Appraisal Review Board, is in session, we use the same place, for lunch breaks. And unfortunately, a few years, not unfortunately, it's right, but a few years back, it became a Class C misdemeanor if any ex parte communications happen. So a lot of my staff will actually eat in their, during this time, they'll eat in their car, just to make sure that we don't have to worry about that when the board's in there. Restricted walkways. I've repurposed, I joke, I've repurposed, every closet into a workstation. The supervisory offices were turned into double occupancy. Here's those closets I was telling you about. Outside, we have some people in hallways as well. And we haven't added any new employees for a few years, so we've kind of been at this level. And then, of course, when we go to the conference, we try to have organizational-wide training. You can kind of see it's difficult in there as well. And we did lose a public research room that was part of the renovation in 2008 in the addition. The public can come in, they can search maps, we can assist them with any needs that they may have that's specific to researching our database. Obviously, I'm just saying, as we looked into this, we're looking at a 20-year strategic plan for this facility, as well as the organization as a whole, to make sure that we can continue to provide the service that we have to the growing entity count that we do currently serve. Right now, we're at 33 entities. So this plan over the 20 years, we're expecting, if their estimates continue, that we're going to be roughly just shy of about 300,000 at the end of this period. So for that, we looked at facility spacing, technology, obviously our staffing needs, public services, as well as this is the one that really, I think, is going to help us in the long run, is the training. Having a facility that we can open up to the public once a quarter. We have a lot of new AI tools, that they can utilize, but if they don't feel comfortable using them, they don't trust it, they won't use it. So I'd like to open that up, have training, have them come in. There's other options that we could do too, is, it is a non-disclosure state. So individuals don't like to give us as much value, so the interior of their homes, we may not know exactly what's going on in there, the condition, maybe it's poor condition, like to bring them in, have a meeting with an appraiser, we can go over their account, so that way when we send notices out, a lot of the clerical errors hopefully are taken care of. So as a tier one, just like their appraisal district, we're tier one, so we're held to the same standards as them during our oversight reviews. These are a lot of the 4 areas that we were focusing on during this project development. And again, I'm going to push hard on the taxpayer remedies. That's really a major aspect of what we do at this point in time. Everybody has a right to come in there and say, hey, you need to, show me why you think this value is correct. It is a predictive model, so to speak with you. So we have to, provide them the opportunity to do so. And if we can't resolve it informally, then they go to the next phase, which is again in-house, but with the appraisal review board, and then hopefully we get it resolved before that. So in December, we had 3 options we considered. I presented to the board. The board decided to go with this one here as the best option for currently to meet the needs, as well as having flexibility as we near the end of this period to meet the challenges at that particular time. And this is what it is. It used to be the original high school, I believe it was, in Seguin, the Mary B. Erskine building. It's a 3-story building on a 4-acre city lot, complete lot there. They do have a gymnasium that isn't part of this renovation project. So my thought being that this was a viable option for the fact that having that flexibility at the end. The alternate options that we considered, we have to buy land because we're exhausted of land at this particular time on roughly just under 2 acres. So we did enter a services agreement when we decided which route to go with an architect as well as some engineering to come out there and do their due diligence, complete inspection of the property. And this is the conceptual design that they've provided us. You can see obviously that left side over there is about 1 acre of land that's undeveloped that could be utilized when the time is necessary. This is the 3 floors that we have, and I'm just kind of highlighting some certain areas. So we can have up to 3, and the training room, obviously, that I discussed earlier, can be repurposed during this period of time of the year to make it 4 ARB panels. we're gonna have to get to the point where Bear is, a lot of these major metros, where you have to have your informal, and then that day, you go right to the board if we can't resolve it. At this particular time, we'd always give property an extra 2 weeks to find more data if they could, if we could come to an agreement. We're getting to the point where it's just not gonna be possible to do that anymore as we grow. First floor, obviously, this is going to be where we can recapture that resource room, as well as the self-service kiosk where we can have staff in there helping them with some of the typical things, change of address, mailing address. A lot of these rudimentary things where they can do themselves. They don't actually have to wait in line to be heard or helped. And then, of course, we'll have a staff break room by themselves. We won't have to worry about them eating up in there. The third floor, this is where it's going to house the majority of the appraisers, and you'll see on there, obviously, we have enough space there to accommodate our entire staff at this point, as well as some expansion over that, that first 5 to 15 years. If we get to the point where we run out, my thought process is we can utilize the gymnasium to then segment it for the ARB, and then we can backfill on that bottom level there, so that way we can prepare for that as that time comes. Past that stuff, of course, that'll be on. Down the road there. Staffing, it indicated roughly 30 to 50%. I broke it down to 5 years increments, and I was thinking anywhere from 2 to 4, depending on how that growth comes about and the need to meet that demand. Taxpayer remedies, I'm projecting if the weighted average holds to the public and the number of appeals we've seen over the average of the last 3 years, we're going to be somewhere close to about 40,000 appeals. It really becomes a numbers game at that point to make sure that everybody gets in there and has their opportunity, because state law does require we give them an informal. One of the aspects that that have hurt us since COVID, COVID came, everybody went remote, it was great, we learned how to do it, and then when we could all come back but safely, I can't bring everybody in there, to have ARBs going on site there, as well as I had 20 appraisers that could hear every 15, 20 minutes with their property owner. I think it's hurt our resolve rate. Our resolve rate's dropped down to in the low 70s, whereas it used to be up in the high 80s, and that's the big money-saving aspect. We can resolve it, and get it done, as well as a time factor to get you all your certified roll. So here's the probable costs that were provided to us. Obviously, the site acquisition was done. We negotiated that with the owner. The probable cost came about based off of the information. I think we provided you the entire project, but that came from the architect and her engineers, and that came in just north of 8.4. So for a total amount of 10.3 million, it's roughly about a 16.3%, respective of your levy, of course, increase to your annual funding of our operations. Financing, this is based off of about 20 years at a 6% interest rate, and just for the purpose of understanding, it doesn't have to be included in your next year's budget. The first payment wouldn't be due funding-wise until the 2027 budget. I broke it down for Universal City. Obviously, you guys are a split district, so it's not a heavy impact at the time, but of course, if you annex those properties next door, obviously more taxable value, your levy will increase, so your funding requirement would actually increase slightly. But currently, you're less than 0.7% of our budget. So to put a point to it, it's roughly $700 annually currently that you guys would have to pay fund us for this project if approved. Cost mitigation, we looked at that. Obviously, that made this option the most viable in the fact that we can sell our current facility and then use all those funds to then pay down our principal. As well, in the 5 years I've been in this role as chief, we've sent back, because the state requires any unspent funds go back to the taxing units, we sent back an average of $300,000 annually. We could also utilize those with your approval at the time to then maybe put towards paying down, any efficiencies that we do in operations that save the funding, budget funding, we could always put towards that. So conservatively, I was looking, that's a bad word. Conservatively though, I was looking at between 3 and 4 years knocked off on the back end of a 20-year note. These are the alternate options. You can kind of see the blue area, which highlights what we would need to do. This is what was presented to my board back in December, along with the option we're presenting today. They are significantly less in cost, roughly somewhere in the mid-5s, 5 million range. Land isn't included on that, those estimates at this time, so that would be a little bit more of an increase. But the main aspect of these options compared to the one that we're seeking approval on is the fact that it doesn't provide flexibility in the long term, you know, and in the end, if we went ahead and did this and the demand does come as we projected it will be, we're gonna have to do this again in 15 years. You do that, and a cost analysis says we'll actually spend $7 million more in taxpayer funds by doing that instead of, you know, choosing the option that we're presenting today, which is a big reason why we chose to go that route. My final thoughts, obviously, you know, my key, I feel, for a public entity, you know, the core aspects of your culture, right? You know, I benefited from my predecessor, Ms. Osborne. You know, she was a very taxpayer-oriented first approach, and we've carried that on. But with that, you know, the staff we have, you know, we successfully passed our annual oversight reviews by the comptroller, whether it be the property value study or the methods and procedures. Leadership-wise, among myself and my management team, we have 22 years of service with the district, so our staff, we have the confidence of our staff as well as the trust. Last year, again, kudos to my board, I asked them if we could get a salary study done to kind of see where we were against other CADs because we had lost a few people. You know, just want to make sure that we're there. It came back slightly low, but what I did was I was able to develop a grade and step compensation system. I presented it to my board in December. They approved it, so it began this year. So what that's going to do is for long-term projections, again, I can kind of manage that by saying, okay, we know what we're going to be spending on payroll, which is usually one of the biggest tickets, you know, for a public entity. And then finally, you know, my pitch is if I check off that last box there, facility, I think we're going to continue to grow and be able to provide the services that we have, you know, historically for everybody in a prudent way, as well as, you know, preparing for the flexibility at the end of this, I think is very important. And that is all. I'm welcome to answer any questions.
Questions? Shelby.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. $700, well, $649.29, right? Okay, just to make sure, a year. Okay. So that's an easy question to have answered. You're moving from a one-story building to a three-story building. How are you going to absorb the maintenance costs of a building 3 times the size you've been in?
Correct, yeah. I mean, we looked at some of the energy costs as well, because we chose to put the windows in, that was a big reason, as well as the asbestos remediation, was we went with the windows because that's going to save, it pays for itself within 5 to 7 years, excuse me, is what we were told. So we figure our energy costs won't be very much more than they would be if we went with the first 2 options.
Sorry, but what we're paying for is towards the loan for the purchase and remodel of the building, correct? That's what the additional cost is?
That's the additional, on top of what the entity pays for our budget.
Right, the reason I'm asking is we're paying that on top of it to help support that loan. What I'm trying to ask ahead of time is so that in 5 years, you're in the new building, oops, it's 30% more than we expected to maintain and operate out of this facility. We need more money again. That's my question. Where are you in that planning process?
Well, I mean, that would be, I haven't gone that far ahead to think about exactly the total impact of, you know, the 3 stories compared to the single story. That, I assume it will increase, you know, whether it's on a linear scale or if it's, you know, start quick and then stabilize this for us. That would be something that I'd have to get back with you. I mean, the main thing is every year, we just did it now where we forwarded you guys the budget. Our entities have to approve that budget. You know, you have an opportunity to say, you know what, we don't want to do that. You know, you guys need to do more with less or whatnot. You know, so you guys have a word, you know, on what we spend annually in our budget when we adopt one.
Mr. Mayor, I'm okay with making a motion to approve the additional funds for them for the Guadalupe Appraisal District. However, I would also ask, please don't wait too long. We just went through this with Sure TMS. I don't want to have a conversation in 2 years going to need 35% more. If we could have been talking next year or as soon as possible so that we don't have these unexpected cost increase coming back to us because of unplanned expenses.
Yeah, and if this does get approved, I have to get 34 of the entities to approve this, so we have to get 21 out of the 28 that are eligible. So if we do get it approved, you know, the timeline would be currently to acquire the site prior to October, and then begin that process, which is why, again, like I said, the first payment for funding wise wouldn't be included in our budget until 2027. But I will definitely, as we begin this process, if it does get approved, being able to work side by side with the architect as well as the individuals involved, I can give you some numbers, projections, of course, to make sure, and then any remedial things that we need to do to make sure that that number doesn't, blow in the green. Whatever we can do to save taxpayer funds is exactly what.
Or just plan ahead. That's all I'm asking. I know things are going to get more expensive. Just come in with reasonable increases versus oops, we're now $1 million in the red.
Yeah, it's one of the things. Reason why I think we only went up 3.4% this year in our budget proposal was the first time I've been below that 5 probably in a long time, and that was because I understand what we're trying to do here. What we're asking you all to approve. So we want to be as well, taxpayer funded. We want to make sure that.
Thank you.
Also,
One more discussion.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. How far will this be away from Orchard Park, our vested interest in your community?
Pretty much the entire,
You're in Seguin. So have you given any thought to distributed sites that would be not full service?
We do have a satellite office in the Guadalupe Services Center right there on 78. We have a satellite office there, but that was the same comment from the commissioners court from this side of the county. And I said, it's the seat of the county. It's where we established. That's where we'll stay for the main facility. But we do have that second location, and I entertained, hey, if they want to give us some additional space there to open up, maybe have some hearings, A or B's, I'm happy to do so.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
I would just caution on the contingency, when I was going through the numbers, I saw 15% contingency. When you're dealing with an existing facility, I would definitely want to bump that up, because right now it just says design contingency, so I'd really like to see, I would recommend that.
No, I got you.
I would recommend that you fluff that a little bit. Well, that's all. Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
Call for the vote.
Councilmember Shelby?
Aye.
Councilmember Goolsby?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Fitzpatrick?
Aye.
Councilmember Putt?
Aye.
Councilmember Rubal?
Aye.
Councilmember Vaughan?
Abstain.
Motion carried.
I appreciate it, y'all. Thank you very much.
Approved. I've had a note that asked for a small break, especially before we get to water conservation. So let's take 6 minutes and come right back.
That's good timing. I appreciate that.
Fluff. Yeah. It's a technical term.
Yeah.
Just a little bit more than 5 minutes, but this is back on.
The green belt.
I'll take my name slate and swap it out.
8:49, it's called the Echo.
Here, it's all one for you. No, it should be cold.
As long as you fix it, that's all that matters.
I did not fix it. I may have made it worse.
That was a tie.
Okay, next up is award 3-year contract for audit services to ABIP.
Thank you, Mayor. We went out for an RFP for audit services. We received 4 bids. We looked through all of those and then went through the pricing that they provide us. So based on experience and pricing, we are recommending that we have a 3-year audit agreement with ABIP PC for 25 to 27, and then that does have a 2-year extension on it should we decide to or elect to extend it for additional 2 years.
Okay.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Okay, discussion?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So we've done this multiple times, multi-year with them in the past, or we've been doing year to year.
Yeah, so state law allows us to go up on professional contracts for 5 years.
Okay. So our previous contract then was for?
5 years, although they were probably here a little bit longer.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion? Call for the vote.
Councilmember Goolsby?
Aye.
Councilmember Shelby?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Fitzpatrick?
Aye.
Councilmember Putt?
Aye.
Councilmember Rubal?
Aye.
Councilmember Vaughan?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Approved. Item C, Resolution 986, 2025, Water Conservation Plan.
All right. Good evening, everybody.
So I'm just here to briefly explain why we are requesting the adoption of the updated groundwater conservation plan, which is also known as the GCP. So the GCP is a required document that outlines how we responsibly use and protect our groundwater supply, which is our main source of drinking water. Universal City has had a GCP in place since 2005, and we are required to update and submit this plan to the Texas Water Development Board every 5 years. The Texas Water Development Board has recently updated the rules, and to stay in state compliance, we now need to formally adopt the plan through council. So the goal of the GCP is to ensure we're using water wisely, reducing waste, and planning ahead to meet the needs of our growing community. It lays out realistic conservation targets, explains the programs we have in place to encourage efficiency, and includes leak detection and reporting practices. Now, you may remember that last year we adopted the Drought Contingency Plan, or DCP, as required by TCEQ. So that plan focuses specifically on how we respond to drought or emergency water shortages with specific stages and restrictions. So the GCP is different in that it takes a broader, long-term approach to conservation, and the DCP, the Drought Contingency Plan, is actually a section within the GCP. So you can think of the groundwater conservation plan as the umbrella plan that includes both our emergency drought response and our ongoing efforts to conserve water every day year-round. So by adopting the updated GCP, we're not only complying with state regulations, we're also committing to protecting our water resources for the future of Universal City.
Thank you. Any discussion, questions?
We're obviously, the city is one of the biggest users, so if this may not be covered in there, but if we notice something that might be water waster, what's the best way for someone to report that for the city to look into it?
You can always call the Public Works Department. You can always call the Code Compliance Department.
Exit form on the
Exit
website,
form,
Ask Jet.
Okay, and is there any feedback loop on that to get so they would get some kind of response saying we looked into it, or?
Ask Jet would give them the phone number, the email to call, and then obviously they'd get a response from that. The Fix-It form is a little bit static. If it's approved in the upcoming budget, we have a citizen request that would give them an automatic response back and give them a ticket number and let them know what department it's into.
Okay, thank you, Mayor.
If I'm not mistaken, after hours or during the middle of the night, the non-emergency number could be called also, and they would relay the information.
Yes, sir.
if necessary.
It goes to PD, and then if there is an issue, PD either calls Randy or the secret cell phone number for Public Works that somebody takes home every night.
Yeah, is there, where does the gray water come into this conversation? Is it, I mean, does that count as wasting if the gray water, I don't understand that, I was just curious.
Well, our gray water doesn't fall under the Edwards Aquifer per se, so when we're talking about conservation in the city, we're mostly concerned with the Edwards Aquifer water. So all that water that's reused, gray water, no, it's not subject to water cuts from the Edwards Aquifer.
Okay, so I can't be mad at the forum whenever their sprinklers are squirting me on the truck, on the driveway.
Are they on gray water?
Yeah, it says that there's signs that say they're in recycled water.
Sure.
Sounds like a selling question.
The college is on gray water, right? They use gray water for all of their irrigation. We have Coconut Pit, Ridge, the golf course. They're all on gray water. They don't have water restrictions when they can do it. We're really talking about potable water, which typically would happen on residential, commercial properties within the city. They're using potable water, and that's what this plan is for.
I just didn't know if gray water was associated with any of that or all. Okay, that's good, thank you.
Just wrong.
And again, within the plan, as I read through it, essentially the PUDs and so forth will have separate irrigation meters if they're using groundwater from Edwards or other aquifers. I believe that was the response last several meetings ago, that's part of it. Yeah, Mike's shaking his head yes.
Are you talking about planned unit developments?
New developments.
Yes, new developments, yes.
Okay, new development, yes.
For a commercial, on the larger products, they have a domestic meter, that's the and they have the irrigation meter, which is what does whatever their areas are. Those are separate meters. On single-family residence, it's 1 meter.
Great, and good. And the last question had to deal with the, oh God, I just look. Oh yes, the population base that you submitted that plan for essentially was what, 22,000 people? So that's short term, and that's short term in 5-year projection, not a 10-year projection. This plan is a 5-year plan for 22,000 people rather than the comprehensive plan, which may expand beyond that.
So the comprehensive plan, and I'm sorry, she wasn't here for that, so she's not going to know the answer. So the comprehensive plan also took in the consideration of the ETJ. When Athena did her project, she looked at the new apartments and the new commercial and Cibolo Crossing, and she did her projections off of those.
Yes.
So that's part of the reason why you're going to see a number disparity between what she did on hers and what the consultants did. They expanded into an additional, how many acres out in the ETJ? 100 plus acres.
As long as our residents have water at the best price possible, and if I can remember from past dioceses, that Mr. Shelby is able to flush his toilets. I think that was his concern a while back.
Water comes in, water goes out.
Thank you very much.
Look for a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
Any other discussion? Call for the vote.
Councilmember Vaughan.
Aye.
Councilmember Goolsby.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Fitzpatrick.
Aye.
Councilmember Putt.
Aye.
Councilmember Rubal.
Aye.
Councilmember Shelby.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Approved. Item D, appointment of the UCEDC director for the unexpired 2024-2026 term, and that was Mr. Mark Dunlap. Call for
Motion to approve.
Second.
any discussion? Yes.
I would just say there's a couple of people in here that would probably approve or would, what am I trying to say? It's too late.
Prefer?
Prefer, thank you.
No
That I would
problem.
prefer, so I'll be voting no on Mr. Dunlap.
Okay. Any other? Yes.
I was glad you're not on that board.
Okay. Call for the vote.
Who was the second?
I was.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Goolsby.
Aye.
Councilmember Shelby.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Fitzpatrick.
Aye.
Councilmember Putt.
Aye.
Councilmember Rubal.
Aye.
Councilmember Vaughan.
No.
Motion carried.
Congratulations, Mr. Dunlap.
Thank you.
And look forward to working with you in the EDC. That being said, it is 8:59. Adjourned.
36.
Who had 8:59 on their bingo card? You say 36? He controls the meeting. He could wait 1 more minute just to mess up the bingo card.
Yeah.